All right, welcome back, Florida Football Insiders Podcast. You heard from the Florida side of things for the Florida Georgia rivalry. Now it's time to talk to Marc Weiszer. He's a beat writer for the Athens Banner Herald up in Athens, Georgia. He's going to talk to us about the Georgia side of things for the allegedly no longer supposed to call it the cocktail party, but we're going to call it the cocktail party. Marc, welcome in. Welcome back to the podcast, Marc. How you doing?
Doing well, Jason. How are you?
I appreciate it. I'm doing well. Thank you, sir. Well, Georgia coming off a bye week, 7-0, 4-0 in the conference. Just give us a little sense through 7 games, kind of just a quick summary of the Georgia team. And for those maybe that haven't seen Georgia play much or haven't seen them in a couple of weeks, give us a little sense of where the Georgia team is now through 7 weeks and coming off a bye week.
I mean, most seasons, if you're 7-0, 4-0 in the SEC, you're thinking this is an incredible season, and you're number one in the nation. But this Georgia team is compared to the 2021 national champions, the 2022 national champions. The winning streak is like 24 in a row, something like that.
Right.
But they're not playing at that level of. I mean, certainly they can win the national championship because there's not really a clear-cut elite team. I guess maybe Michigan, but Michigan's schedule has been kind of soft, and they'll have their biggest test still to come. But Georgia's had some games that you didn't expect to be as tight. Going to Auburn,
Right.
even Vanderbilt was a little bit, took a while to, or just took a while to put them away, I guess, basically. Their best game, the game that they looked the closest to the level
Right.
that they've had in the last couple of years was the Kentucky game where they just
Sure.
dominated. So, it's and you lose Brock Bowers for several weeks now, so that's going to be a big obstacle for Georgia to deal with.
Let's talk. We'll start on the offensive side first, then we'll get to the defense here in a few minutes. Talk about the new offensive coordinator, Mike Bobo. How similar or how different is his philosophy or scheme than it was with Todd Monken? Is it the same scheme, just a different guy calling the plays? Give us a little sense of new offensive coordinator Mike Bobo versus what you had previously with Todd Monken.
Yeah, it's the same scheme. It's the same offense. I mean, Kirby, made sure that why mess up something when you have a really good thing that they had the last couple of years with Todd Monken, who, you know, they would have been happy to give him a lifetime contract as an offensive coordinator. At least Georgia fans would. A guy that comes in and delivers a national championship, along with all those great defensive stars that they had. But Bobo was here last year. He's the former head coach of Colorado State. He's the former offensive coordinator at Georgia,
Yep.
and quarterback here, and had some not great years as offensive coordinator at South Carolina and Auburn in between. But last year he was on staff as a offensive analyst and kind of soaking up exactly what Todd Monken was doing. So, it's always different when you have a new play caller. There's sort of a touch and an art to that. And but I think Mike Bobo, has probably done better than expectations. If you look at, I was just pulled up their national stats before I came on here. I hadn't looked at it since the off week. Their numbers didn't change in terms of yards per game and points per game, but their rankings did. They're now third in the nation in total offense, fifth in the nation in passing offense, seventh in scoring offense. Georgia's throwing the ball more now as a percentage of pass to run since like 1994, I think it was, with Eric Zier, somewhere in that range.
Right.
They're doing it because they've had a lot of injuries at running back, and they have a lot of good talent on the outside. And you could say Brock Bowers is an outside player because he lines up at wide receiver as well as an inline tight end. But and they have a new quarterback, Carson Beck, that's not necessarily the type of runner that Stetson Bennett was. So, Bobo gets high marks for what he's done so far this year.
Speaking of Carson Beck, he's come in. To me, he's gotten better and better every week for the most part. I mean, I don't think he's not had a disastrous game. He played really well in the Kentucky game. I think it's a guy obviously following Stetson Bennett and the expectations, and he was a big recruit and all that stuff. How would you grade Carson Beck through 7 games? I think the guy's done a really good job, and it's gotten better and better every week.
Yeah, I mean, a first-year starter. His first 7 games. Probably the Vanderbilt game last game. I don't remember what his quarterback rating was, but he had a fumble that he lost. He had an interception that would have been a pick six. He tackled a guy at the 1 yard line and injured him for at least a couple of weeks. So with kind of an unorthodox tackle, but he chased it down. But he had 3 straight 300-yard passing games against Auburn, Kentucky, and UAB before that. So throwing the ball at a very high completion rate, running when he needs to, not running as much as Stetson Bennett, but pretty good touchdown to interception ratio. I think Kirby Smart would like to see him maybe, have a little bit less, maybe take a sack more, throw a ball away more, settle for a punt, and maybe throw a risky type of ball. But he's done a good job for his first year.
Talking about Brock Bowers, obviously, when you played Georgia before the injury, he was the guy you had to scheme around. You had to defend. You had to scheme up how to defend him, double teams, and all that stuff, especially in the red zone. How will Georgia? Will they change anything? What they do formationally with him not in the lineup, or do they have? Or I don't know if there's another skill guy on the outside that you have to really defend against. I mean, they've got good players, but there's not a Randy Moss kind of guy. Not another Brock Bowers. How will the no Brock Bowers in the lineup affect their schematics and how they attack defenses?
Well, I mean, that it came during the off week, or with 2 weeks between games, is obviously a big benefit for them. They don't have to scramble as much to kind of figure out exactly how they want to, shift things around a little bit. Lawson Lucky is their now number 2 tight end. Oscar Delp is another highly rated guy that came in. He's the new tight end 1, and he's been a very reliable kind of second option at the tight end position with Bowers. I think he'll kind of slide in there. He's not going to do what Brock Bowers did, and you might see less 2 tight end sets. I would imagine you will. They played the second half of the Vanderbilt game without Bowers. You saw Dominique Lovett, the Missouri transfer, getting a lot more targets. I think Ra Thomas is a guy that was already kind of becoming more involved in the passing game. He brings a deep threat. Arian Smith is a guy that they haven't really been able to unleash as a deep ball threat. Him and Carson have had some misconnections. Carson's overthrown him a couple times, and Arian has a couple drops. So I think the big guy to watch would be Ladd McConkey, who's 3 or 4 games back now from a back injury. He really hasn't played as many snaps as you would expect, as they're taking it easy with the back, because it kind of acts up and limited him in terms of how many snaps he got the last game out. But he was one of their top receivers the last couple of years during these national championship runs. So if they can keep him on the field, he's already been kind of a third down guy that they really can count on to make the big play.
Yeah, McConkey's been a huge contributor for them, like you said, in critical situations, third down, red zone, that kind of stuff. Let's go to the defense quickly. Talk about the defense. Obviously, they've lost so many guys to the NFL the last couple of years. They don't have the star power maybe that they had last year with Jalen Carter and some of those guys. Give me the position group on defense that's kind of been the strength of the defense through 7 weeks, and kind of where the defense is going with what 5-6 weeks left in the year.
It's definitely the secondary. I mean, you have Malachi Starks that was a freshman All-American last year. Could be an All-American. He's having that kind of type of season. Doesn't make too many mistakes in coverage, and is very good in making plays in the run defense as well. Tyke Smith is a guy that was really quiet his first 2 years at Georgia. Came as a transfer from West Virginia. He was an AP All-American, like 3rd team when he came here. Battled injuries. He's got 4 interceptions, for Georgia this season. And Javon Bullard is a guy that shifted from the star position to one of the safety spots. We missed a couple games with an injury, and I think he's the kind of guy that you could watch to have a really big second half of the season. And Kamari Lassiter is kind of an unsung hero as a cornerback. He maybe doesn't make as many flash plays, but is very reliable as your number 1 cover cornerback. So that's your best area of the team for Georgia. Even though the fact that they don't really have the kind of guys on the defensive line to apply the pressure in the passing game for opposing quarterbacks, they're very solid on the back end.
Looking at the schedule, you obviously got Florida this week. You got Missouri, which is now all of a sudden a big game in the East. Missouri's playing great, and they come to Athens. I believe it's is it next? Yeah, next week. They're 2 weeks from. Excuse me. Come to Athens, and then you go to Tennessee in mid-November. Do you see? Obviously, you never know what could happen with injuries, and then obviously you could potentially see Alabama in the championship game. What where do you see this schedule, and do you see this is a, I won't say ho hum, but do you think it's pretty safe to say they're going to get through these games unscathed?
I don't know if that's safe to say. I mean, without Brock Bowers, let's see what Georgia
Right.
is. I mean, this could be a deal where the team rallies around and plays better everywhere else. Knowing that they don't have as much margin for error, and those teams you mentioned. I mean, that's not an easy slate considering that the teams that they've already played in the SEC were on the softer side. When we look at
Right.
a South Carolina team that's really struggled, Auburn probably played their best game of the year against Georgia. Kentucky didn't, obviously, but and you didn't mention Ole Miss. That's kind of in between there, squeezed between Missouri and Tennessee,
Right.
and that might be the best game on Georgia's schedule. We'll see, what Ole Miss brings to Athens, but all these teams, are formidable enough that Georgia could win all these games by 3 touchdowns or more, and they also could come down to the wire. I think, especially game at Tennessee. I don't know if that's going to be a night game there or what it might be. Probably
Right.
CBS, but um, going to Knoxville is not going to be easy. It's going to be tougher. Tennessee doesn't play probably as well on the road, although clearly had a great first half against Alabama. We'll see. I mean, certainly Georgia is vulnerable. I would say it's possible that one of these teams could sneak up and get them.
All right, two more questions. I'll get you out of here. Give me the one position group throughout the roster that you think really this last half of the year needs, if they can improve, whether it's consistency, whether it's production, all the above. What's the one position group that if they improve, Georgia's going to be in a great spot moving forward?
Well, I mean, they've already started to improve. Dejon Edwards has been very good at running back, but he's kind of been a one-man band in terms of guys that they can rely on because Kendall Milton hasn't remained healthy. He got banged up again in the Vanderbilt game and didn't play at all in the second half. We'll see if they get Roderick Robinson back, another scholarship tailback. But you wonder if they, in this stretch of games, can they give Dejon Edwards 20 carries like he had against Vanderbilt? They've been working in Cass Jones as a walk-on running back and offer some things in the passing game as well. And Dylan Bell is a wide receiver that's been playing some running back as well. So I think keeping those guys healthy and maybe finding some help for Dejon Edwards, so he doesn't have to carry the load too much, is probably one area. Then of course defensive line. Kirby Smart doesn't necessarily need Georgia to kind of ring up the amount of sacks. They're like 95th or something in the nation in sacks, but they certainly could use maybe some more. They haven't forced a fumble all season. That they have a bunch of interceptions, but they haven't turned the ball over with knocking the ball loose and changing the field, short field, that kind of stuff. There's no Jalen Carter, there's no Trayvon Walker, so maybe if a guy like Michael Williams on the defensive line can really kind of emerge as a 5-star sophomore and be a guy that can bring those kind of difference-making type plays, that would be great for Georgia.
Last thing, talk about the rivalry with Florida. Obviously, I don't know what rivalry do Georgia fans think is their biggest? Is it Auburn? A lot of people think it's Georgia Auburn. Is it Georgia Florida? In your mind and your talkings to the Bulldog Nation, is this their rivalry game, biggest rivalry game with the Gators? Obviously, it's an every year deal. And it's a neutral site game and been that way for a long time. Just talk about the rivalry game with Florida.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a doubt. I think it's Florida, Georgia. Is the rivalry game over on this side? I guess you would say Georgia, Florida. I mean, the Auburn game, Georgia's had their number for a good bit the last couple of 15 years, I guess it is. Except for that SEC championship season in 2017, where Georgia lost the first game at Auburn and came back and won the championship. Georgia Tech is a game Georgia's just dominated, except for some Paul Johnson triple option teams that got him in Athens a few times. But it's Florida. I mean, Alabama is not an annual game, so
Right.
but clearly, Georgia winning that national championship game against Alabama, they are a rival. They're going to play again next year in the new schedule or the new 16-team league, but it's Georgia, Florida, and if Napier can get this thing, obviously 5-2 is a pretty good start. If they can keep it going there, that will bring more back to the rivalry.
All right, Mark, I appreciate the time. You're going to enjoy Jacksonville. You will be there on Saturday. It'll be the CBS game, 3:30 Eastern time. Enjoy the festivities. I know you will, and we really appreciate the time. Tell everybody where they can find all your great work online covering Georgia.
Yeah, it's online, Athens.com. Check it out. And got coverage this week as the Gators and Bulldogs go at it.
Well, Mark, we appreciate the time and enjoy it and have fun covering the game.
Good to be with you. See ya.
Okay.